After a 6-year study, scientists have determined that blue whales are getting quieter, and this appears to be a call for help, not just for the largest animal on the planet, but for the entire ocean ecosystem as a whole. Welcome back to Tea of the Sea, and blue whales are loud. Not only are they the largest animal on the planet today, or even in the history of the planet, but they are the loudest animal alive today, capable of producing calls at a volume of 188 decibels or so, which is louder than a jet engine. Despite how loud they can be, most people don't hear them. Blue whales vocalize at a very low frequency, anywhere between 10 to 40 hertz, and human hearing bottoms out at about 20 hertz. So most blue whale calls are at or below the human hearing range. Simply put, most of the time you can't hear them despite the fact that they are vocalizing. Because of how loud they are and how low of a frequency blue whales vocalize at, their calls travel incredibly long distance, over hundreds and hundreds of miles, allowing these animals to communicate with each other across entire oceans. And blue whale calls can actually be really important for scientists to look at. Blue whales, despite their large size, they feed really low on the food chain, and so they can actually be a relatively good indicator as to how healthy an ecosystem can be, as well as it allows us to determine more where blue whales are going to throughout the year. And 3,000 feet below the surface in California sits a hydrophone. And this hydrophone has been there for many years now, constantly picking up sounds of all sorts of noises, including shrimp, fish, whales, ships, etc. It picks up just about everything. When biological oceanographer John Ryan from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute and his team began this study in 2015, they didn't realize how important it was going to end up being for them because of something that was happening from a couple years prior, much further north. In 2013, an abnormal heat wave began in the Bering Sea that would later become known as the Blob. This was a massive heat wave spreading south down the Pacific from the Bering Sea and stretching all the way from Alaska to Mexico by 2016. And in some areas, ocean temperatures rose upwards of 15 degrees Celsius. Such a rapid and extreme rise in temperature was causing multitudes of problems. Ocean currents were changing and prey distribution was thrown out of whack. It was becoming an issue from the smallest animals all the way up to the biggest whales. Some species of whales, like blue whales and fin whales, almost exclusively rely on a single type of prey, a small shrimp-like crustacean called krill, and the blob marine heat wave devastated krill numbers. As the blob continued to spread and not go away, not only were krill numbers dropping substantially, what krill was remaining was becoming harder to find, and John Ryan and his team found that over the course of this marine heat wave, blue whale vocalizations dropped by about 40%. For some other whales, like humpback whales, who feed on a wide variety of different food sources, not just krill, they were comparatively doing pretty well. They continued to vocalize throughout the year, but the blue whales weren't doing so nearly as much as they historically were known to do. For Ryan, this meant only one thing. The whales weren't singing because they didn't have the time to vocalize. They had to spend more and more energy looking for food. They couldn't afford to not look for food and vocalize with each other. This decline in blue whale vocalizations was not limited to just the Eastern Pacific. Researchers in New Zealand's South Taranaki Bight found a similar trend from 2016 to 2018. Blue whales have several different kinds of calls, and the most common call that they tend to do when they're feeding is simply referred to as a D call. This is what it sounds like. D calls can be produced by both males and females, and they are most often heard when individuals are socializing with each other while they're feeding. They can do the calls elsewhere, and they are known to do so, but D calls are generally a good indicator that blue whales are actively feeding. A couple other calls that male blue whales will do are called A and B calls. Here's what they sound like respectively. And like I said, only males are producing A and B calls. It seems to have some sort of link to reproduction. We're not sure the full functionality behind it, but that's what seems to be going on. And in New Zealand, between 2016 and 2018, researchers found that blue whale D calls decreased during warm water years, and mating calls decreased in the following years. This has a very clear correlation. They're not finding enough food the year prior, and when they go to the mating season and the mating grounds, they're not reproducing because they don't have the energy to do so. It is a very clear indicator that the whales are under a lot of stress, especially during those warm water years where food stocks plummet. Blue whales can sometimes be referred to as the sentinels of the oceans because they can communicate with each other across the literal worldwide ocean. And changes in their behavior can indicate a change in the ocean environment because they feed so low on the food chain where we first begin to see changes happening. So why is this important for us to understand? Well, because of climate change. Human accelerated climate change is causing a lot of problems. I've talked about it before, everyone is talking about it, and this is a big deal. Marine heat waves are becoming more frequent, they are lasting longer, and they are getting hotter. Since the 1940s, the number of marine heat waves has tripled, with several of those heat waves spiking ocean temperatures upwards of 5 degrees Celsius, which is very extreme for such a stable overall environment. And these extremes send ripples throughout the entire oceanic food web, from the smallest planktons to the giant blue whale and its relatives. And sound is one of the very few ways that researchers can get an ocean-wide understanding of how an ecosystem is doing, because sound travels so far and so well underwater. But today, it's really difficult to get an understanding of how a healthy ocean ecosystem should sound like because of the worldwide shipping industry. And the COVID-19 era lockdowns actually gave us a little bit of insight into what an ocean should sound like. As shipping slowed down during the lockdown, scientists saw in some areas animals that normally would avoid a shipping area returning to that area because it wasn't so loud that they would generally want to avoid it. And I'm getting a little bit off track on that front, but the moral of the story right now is that sound monitoring of our oceans is actually really important, and better long-term analyses of the ocean sounds can help us better create policies that can protect all ocean animals, not just the large whales. Blue whales can live upwards of 80 years on average, so population trends are really slow to play out. And since the 1960s, when commercial whaling was banned internationally, we've only had about a couple dozen blue whale generations be born, so the population is still incredibly vulnerable. And at this point, the science is clear. Human activity is accelerating climate change, and climate change is beginning now to heavily affect our oceans. And the message from the world's largest and loudest singer is also crystal clear. They are struggling to find enough food because they are not talking to each other about the food that they find. And whether we address their silent cry for help will determine not just the fate of the largest animal to ever exist on the planet, but the fate of the entire ocean and the world in the future.